Okay, so this is the title of today's presentation. This is the person leading it. Hi, I've done this a lot, hundreds of hours of coaching individuals to try to pass the interview at Amazon. And yeah, I love what I do. Today, we're going to talk for 30 to 45, and then I'm going to take questions for 10 to 20. The way that the questions are going to work are, if you have something that you definitely want to get answered, post it in the Q&A functionality. Then at the end, we'll rank it by most upvoted and answer them from top to bottom. If you have random stuff throughout, you can put it in the chat functionality. I'll try to get to it, but like, what's the Discord? Like, we could probably throw that in here. Probably throw that in there. I could do that probably. If Daniel can't get to the Discord link, yep, Tyler, sweet. So after, we're gonna party on Discord, crack a beer if you like, or a tea, and keep the party going on Discord. So let's get into it. So we're going to talk about the theory behind LP and how it works. Then we're going to talk about exactly what to look out for, what to not do, and then what to make sure you hit in the interview. The long form LP guide that we just put out a couple of days ago, it goes over this very intense how to practice section. It doesn't really translate that well to this webinar, so we're not going to get into that too much. Why am I talking? And, you know, why might this be different than other LP stuff that's out there? Number one, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Amazon interviews on our platform. And that data set with all the interviewers that I got to watch and listen to, that's the main reason why this is different. Number two, there are a lot of systems out there that will recommend things that you can do to try to score high in the LP interview, but I don't know of any systems out there that make you score higher no matter what. Something that can lower your stress and increase your odds, something that's like a Jedi mind trick. I haven't come across anything like that, and that's why I was frustrated and wanted to make the guide in the first place. Also, if you do look at the long form guide, you'll see that at the very end, there is a 6-step process for how to find really good behavioral answers. So that's why the whole thing is different. So getting into the theory, I do not currently work in Amazon, no. So getting into the theory, so these are the 16 LPs. I'm not gonna read them out loud, but when the LPs come into play. So at Amazon, there are behavioral rounds and there are technical rounds. Amazon loves LPs so much, they ask LP questions during the behavioral rounds, and they even ask them during the technical rounds. You can fail and not get an offer simply because of your answers to LP questions. You can get down leveled simply because of your answers to LP questions. So they decide the amount of responsibility that you'll get. And it's really just when you talk about the work that you've done. Okay, so the interesting thing about the LPs is what happens with the LPs is consistent. Every interviewer will be assigned 1 to 3 LPs to assess you on. There will be interviewers and there will be one bar raiser whose opinion is more important than the others and can actually override their opinion, but we'll get to that later. So each person is assigned an LP and they rank you on whether you meet the bar, you are above the bar, or you're below the bar. And the bar is 50% of all the Amazon candidates at this level and current employees. Are you better or worse than half the people we see on our team and competing to be on our team? So that's consistent, that's the what. But how they assess for LP is massively different between people. So on one hand, if you watch 10 of these different sessions with 10 different interviewers, you'll see 10 different styles. One interviewer may ask way more questions than another. The other interviewer may do the opposite. And the same different interviewers will see the same behavior and interpret it to mean different things. But the worst part is no one can agree on what makes a good answer good. So if there's not a rubric for what makes a raise the bar answer, or a meet the bar answer, or a lower the bar answer, that means that the interpretation of the interviewer is really the most important thing. That can be scary, or if you learn a fail-proof way to appeal to their broad interpretation, then it's an opportunity. So just to get into a little bit here, this type of stuff that Amazon likes are on the screen. The one that surprises me the most is big losses. People are always trying, at least in my experience, when they talk about failures, they try to hide their failures and talk about some random thing they did when they first got out of college. Amazon wants you to talk about when you swung for the fences and when you lost, when you swung for the fences and struck out. So that's interesting. The things they don't like, the one that's the most surprising to me over here is probably the conflict rabbit holes and the misunderstanding of have backbone, disagree, and commit. But if you understand the basics of what they like and you have a good rule of thumb, then you can make decisions that are good when you're greeted with new information. Okay. So there's no clear rubric. The evaluation is subjective, and the interviewer's interpretation is what everything relies on. So there are a lot of people in here tonight that are viewing this as a standardized test. They are viewing there being one right answer, there being no debate to a right answer, there being no way to change the test, there being no way to shape the content of the interview to fit their strengths, and they are completely wrong. This is a game. This is not a standardized test. It's a game that is prone to cognitive biases, that is shapeable to your advantage, and that you can actually mold into the way that you want and beat the game. So the way that I like to think about it is that the most important thing to remember here, big difference between this and this, the standardized test and the game, is the person who is your counterpart, just like you, is making up the rules as they go. That's a game. And because we know there's no rubric and it is all about interpretation, we know the interviewer is making up as they go too. So your prep matters because for a couple of reasons. Number one, people think, I don't have to prep for a behavioral. It's work that I've already done. I know my work history, but there's a big mistake here. This is a common reason people fail behavioral interviews, but specifically at Amazon. So somebody did a research study a couple years ago, and they asked 200 hiring managers in Silicon Valley, hey, how do you assess culture fit? 70% of these hiring managers said that they just want to hire reasonably friendly people who can do the work. Microsoft, Google, and a ton of startups just want to hire reasonably friendly people who can do the work. So in their behavioral rounds, how much prep do you have to do? Not much, really. Just put a smile on, communicate clearly, and don't be a jerk. Right, but that's 70% of the companies. 15% of the companies, they said, the way we define culture fit is these specific traits that we have deemed to be important, and we assess the candidate on those traits. Amazon is one of those companies. That is one reason why prepping for them is more important, because it's more specific. Amazon doesn't want to hire reasonably friendly people who can do the work. So that general blasé approach to prep won't do it here. You need a more specific kind of prep. But the other reason, and the more troublesome reason, the one that people miss, your bar raiser is the most antagonistic interviewer probably you have come across in a long time. The Amazon interviewers on the whole are very aggressive. There is a style amongst Amazonians where they embrace competition. They like challenging you. They want to see what you do if they hold your feet to the fire. And it is kind of shocking if you don't ever have any experience with that before. So if you come in prepping for a reasonably friendly, prepping for the type of behavioral round that you might do at Google or Microsoft, you will find your content of your answers aren't good. And when the interviewer is very challenging and very competitive, then you'll get thrown off your game. And now you just might be having enough self-doubt that it just get completely shot from there. So that's why prep matters. So our theory for how to beat the game, how to score an LP every time, no matter what, it's changed over time. So anybody out there who has ever taken a coaching session with somebody who's worked at Amazon or talked to somebody about Amazon prep, one of the common things is to hear a question. Let's say it's, tell me about a time that you had to make a decision between a short-term gain and a long-term win. That's the question. And they say, guess what LP is underlying the question. So on one hand, this would be pretty cool. If I can guess what LP they're asking me about, then I can direct my answer at that LP, hit that LP, and hey, everybody goes home happy. But there's 16 LPs, but 2 of them are for managers and above the broad scale and responsibility and be the world's best employer. No one's going to get any questions about those. So there's 14 LPs, right? So my chances are 1 in 14 that I'm going to hit that LP and guess it right. But really, then you could say, but some levels, like let's say a L6 at Amazon is likely getting asked about invent and simplify, which is true, but still invent and simplify is maybe 1 of 6 LPs that L6 engineers are going to be asked about. So still my chances are only 1 in 6, but it gets more complicated because these interviewers on purpose, they craft questions that make it look like they're asking for 1 LP in the question, but it's really about another one. Like they'll ask about a conflict and they'll say the word conflict, but it's really about earned trust. So your probability, if you're guessing for the LPs, is just low. And it's tempting to want to guess the underlying LP, but it's not a good use of your time. So after we decided that that was true, we thought, well, maybe we can condense all of the LPs into 1 bucket. And we went about a lot of different ways of doing that. And then eventually, from listening to enough interviews, it became really clear. Just like Frodo in Lord of the Rings finds that there's 1 ring to rule them all, we found that there's only 1 LP to rule them all. There's only 1 LP that without this LP, Amazon wouldn't be Amazon. There's only 1 LP that all of the other LPs come from, and there's only 1 LP that Amazon cares about the most: customer obsession. So you can easily make the case that every single LP comes from customer obsession. Not only that, you can make the case that broadcasting customer obsession actually looks like other LPs too. And I'll show you this later when we change an answer from having no customer obsession framing to having customer obsession framing. When you watch it, you'll see, that could kind of be deliver results too, or that could kind of be dive deep too. So the whole thing is broadcast customer obsession early and often, from the questions you ask to your answers that you have to anytime you open your mouth about your projects. It's the closest thing we found to a cheat code. It's in an interview so general with so much subjectivity. The best thing you can do is cover as much surface area as possible. And going for customer obsession all the time is the best solution we found to do that. So what to expect, what to not do, and then definitely what to do. So let's take a look at these questions. So this is something that an interviewer asked a candidate. And we're not going to show you the candidate's responses, but I'm trying to get you to have a feel, if you've never walked into an Amazon interview before, what it's like to walk into the interview and have an interviewer who's a little bit more aggressive than other interviews, what it feels like. So you can get a kind of a direct experience with what it's like. So here's the first question. How do you make sure you're focused on the right deliverables when you have several competing priorities? Then the candidate answers. And the follow-up question is, can you tell me about a time when you didn't manage priorities and something fell through the cracks, And then the candidate answers. Next follow-up question, what could you have done better? Next follow-up question, I don't think you answered the question. I think you're answering a more generic question. I'm asking you to tell me about a time when your process for competing priorities didn't work. So what's happening here? What's this question about? Is there a straightforward answer here? No, there's multiple interpretations, right? This is an ambiguous question. Ambiguity on its own gets engineers shaken in their boots. And then you multiply ambiguity with failure. Hey, take that personal philosophy of yours about this ambiguous topic and tell me how it's wrong. Ambiguity times failure, definitely very challenging. And then, let's go into failure a little bit more. Let me take that one step further. And after that, I think that you prepared an answer and you just copied and pasted that somewhere where it didn't belong. I think you prepped for this interview and you're just throwing something out that you are rehashing even though it doesn't fit. So you're not going to find too many challenges that are more direct than that in an interview. And this is classic Amazon. Like most companies would just stop at ambiguity, like Google. Google would just stop at ambiguity and then they'd compliment you, because an Amazon interviewer is twice as more likely to directly challenge you, but a Google interviewer is twice as more likely to flatter you. But nonetheless, this classic Amazon, they're going to hold your feet to the fire just to see how you react to the flame. because they love their LPs. They live and die by their LPs, and they want to see if you essentially speak the same language as them. So that's how it feels to be in the interview with Amazon. So we got some common mistakes here. I got some new ones and some ones in the guide. I'm not going to read all these out loud, but take a look at these. So most common, from yellow to blue to pink to whatever that dark red color is. Okay. So we'll go one by one. Number one, there are some things in life you can't get enough of, whether it's sex, food, or power. For interviewing, there is no company in the world that can hear an answer and that answer will have too much impact or too much metrics. That's true at all companies. Now, Amazon is like all companies in that way. They want to hear about impact and they want to hear about metrics, but Amazon docks more points if you do not include metrics and you do not include impact in your answers. So let's define these very quickly. Impact is bottom line impact, outcome, results, how the day-to-day work that you do affects the company as a business, okay? We'll show you later how to find impact, and it's not as complicated as people think. Metrics are data. Metrics can be qualitative or quantitative data about the research that you did or about the scope. Really, it's hard to define scale and complexity without metrics. So once again, everybody likes metrics and impact, but if you don't give Amazon metrics and impact, they'll be more upset than other companies. Okay, this has to do with, well, there's a lot of different ways people mess up these conflict answers, a lot of different ways. They're very unique. The most common way that people mess it up comes from the interviewee trying to prove to the interviewer that the interviewee was right in their conflict. They are trying to justify to the interviewer that their approach was better, that they were smarter than their counterpart, that it really was a better idea to change the hosting environment and not to use a proxy server. And it's not a good use of your time. So you do not need to focus on why your approach was better than the colleague's approach. That's not a good use of your time because you're not trying to justify that you were right. You do not need to get into the minute details of why it was a better idea to use Cassandra over another database. So because you're not trying to justify that you were right, you don't need to get bogged down in those details. And we'll show you the 4 rules to follow to stay on track for conflict later. This one is simple, but you got to get it in order for it to be simple. So 80% of your answer should be about I, the work that I did. When you do that wrong, the feedback you hear is, you know what, we really liked Kevin, but while we kind of understood what his projects were about, we didn't really understand what his role in the projects was. Say I. That's how you focus on individual contribution, about 80% of the time. For that last 20%, that can be how specific processes of this company works or what everybody else was doing or things like that. But this one's simple, just say I most of the time. This one is a tiny one, but it sounds really clunky and unnatural when you say customer obsession in an interview or any other LP in an interview. You can say, you know, I love delighting customers. You could say, you know, making the user happy is my top priority, because that's riffing on customer obsession and it's not copying and pasting it. And bonus round, we got some bonus mistakes that I just learned from a bar raiser earlier this week. So I got to get this one right because I just learned this. So this bar raiser worked at Amazon for several years. He told me the #1 reason I fail people as a bar raiser is they use the same 2 examples for all 8 LPs we ask them, and none of them ever raise the bar for that LP. I'm once again asking for you to stop repeating stories so much. There's a little bit of subtlety here, so don't miss it. I can use an example multiple times, and I shouldn't try to hide it when I do. I can say, hey, remember that project I was telling you about earlier where I complete it from start to finish? Actually, that did involve a conflict. So would you mind if I told you about that for this question about conflict? You can do that, But if there's just 2 examples that you reuse every single time, that's the most common reason why people are going to get rejected. Okay. Number 2. Once again, this is a brand new one from the bar raiser. So the reasons that people get automatically disqualified for L5, that's SDE2 for the record. If you've never led a project from start to finish or nearly from start to finish, that's basically an immediate no. If you say that you've never delivered something, that's an immediate no. And if this one's not an immediate no, but it's pretty close to an immediate no. If you don't do anything for quality like code reviews or unit testing, that's pretty much an immediate no. And one more, using STAR, the beloved STAR, the de facto gold standard in behavioral interviewing that's been around for 40 years, and yet people think it's the optimal solution for behavioral interviewing. STAR is complete bullshit, death to STAR, and this interviewer gets it. When they can tell that it's obvious that you're using STAR, they don't like it. So keep that in mind. There's a really cool guy on YouTube. His name is called An Engineered Life. I'll send the link out to his page in the Discord after, but he says, use STAR as a filter after you've crafted your examples to see if your story hits the key points, but don't use STAR as the mechanism to create your examples. I think we're on the same page about that. Okay, what to do? Give me the tricks, baby. Trick number 1, the most important trick, the Jedi mind trick, beat the drum with customer obsession. Anytime and all the time. It's like pizza, baby. It's good no matter what. What does it look like? Let's read this answer. This is without customer obsession. Okay. So it's basically just someone saying, I wanted to use object-oriented approach, I didn't get to. But now when we put that in customer obsession framing, here's what it looks like. So that last line is the key part of this here. If we would have used object-oriented, customers would get more stuff faster. So I see this as being related to other LPs too. I see this as insist on highest standards, or even are right a lot, or even somebody that's learn and be curious. So once again, when you see customer obsession done right, and when it's done all the time, different interviewers will interpret that in different ways. So once again, that's why we aim for it, because it's multidisciplinary and it can appear as many different things from the outside. Okay, if you want to take a screenshot of this, this is probably the most valuable thing in the presentation. I had to work a really long time to be able to get this. So metrics and impact are related. If you find one, you usually find the other. I could probably talk about this for an hour because metrics and impact help you have better resumes. They help you in your performance reviews. They help you in your interviewing skills. And there's probably other use cases too. But the idea is you want to ask yourself questions to unearth metrics and impact. And then you take those instances of metrics and impact and you put them into your pocket. And then you can go into the interview and use them all the time. That's the idea. So my favorite one on here is number 3. Take anything you've ever built and say, what did I make? Let's say it was an automation script. What was it like before my automation script and after my automation script? Let's say it took the machines a day to do something, and then I automated it down to an hour. An easy way to find both metrics and impact is say if it went from 24 hours to 1 hour, I just made it 24 times faster. Great. The more advanced way of finding metrics and impact would say it was from 24 hours down to 1 hour. So what do we have? A delta of 23 hours. Well, how much time per year was those 23 hours wasted had I never built my automation script? And okay, how much time does it cost per year for those 23 hours to be done over that X amount of instances? That gives me a dollar amount, which I can then say, I cut costs by that much. So if you want to get good at metrics and impact, just go, what did I build? How long did it take to do before? How long did it take to do after? How often would that have happened? How often does this action happen? And then how much would it have costed if I never built the thing? Okay. But there's other cool things in here too, like what did users or colleagues say about it? Because qualitative data is good too, and that shows impact too. Okay, so when it comes to Amazon interviewers, they do not expect you to have an answer for every question that they ask. So if you get a question and your answer is going to be about how one time you reformatted one source code file, that's probably not going to show them much to raise the bar or meet the bar. It's better to just say, you know what, I don't actually have an example for that one, and they'll move on. Do you want to do that for 5 questions in a row? No. But do you have a free pass to do that once or twice in an interview? Absolutely. And do you have a free pass if what you have in your head is not good? For the love of God, please, yes. So much yes. Okay, great. Another key lesson for all of my friends here tonight. There are 2 parts to have backbone: disagree and commit. Let's break them down. Here's what they are not: making people do it your way. Okay, Jeff Bezos is not the Terminator. This is not what disagree and commit means. Disagree and commit is first about, that's right, disagreeing. But after that, this is the important part: being committed to a solution. It does not matter if it's your solution or their solution or someone else's solution. You disagree, you vocalize your opinion, and then you commit to a solution. Okay, it's as simple as that. Okay, that one's important. I hope we got it. Okay, 4 rules when talking about conflict. Number 1, don't make your interviewer wait. One time, I had a conflict with my manager about a decision that we were going to make in the architecture. Say it at the beginning and then pause. Simple as that. Number 2, make sure the topic of the conflict and the scope of the conflict is relevant to someone of your level. A junior engineer can certainly have a conflict with another junior engineer about variable names. Totally reasonable. A senior engineer talking about the same thing, probably not, right? Senior engineer would hopefully be something a little bit more robust, like a decision to make in the architecture, or maybe choosing one technology over another. Okay, so think about the scope of the level you're going for and think that you want to have a conflict that would be reasonable for somebody at that level. Okay, this is something people do kind of a lot. They'll say, well, one time I had a conflict. I said this, they said that, and then they were like, no, you're right, it's this. It's not a conflict. They were just wrong, right? Conflict is, I said this, they said that, I went and got data, showed the data to somebody else, then I showed them, and they weren't convinced, but finally we showed them this other thing through data, and then they were convinced. That's the idea. Time should pass and data should be shown. It's a cheat code. Okay, maybe this is just a good answer to see. There's no fat on this. There's no opinions. It's just the facts. So that's pretty cut and dry. You want to be like Ernest Hemingway, no fluff. Also, if you do check out the long form LP guide that I wrote, there's this section where there are sharks. If you find the sharks and you watch that video, that's the best LP answer we have come across in the hundreds of ones that we watched. And so that one will also show you how to talk about what happened and sticking to the facts. It's not about conflict, but the way he talks and the way he structures his answer and the lack of rabbit holes he goes down makes it the best example. So you could check out the sharks in the long-term guide to see how to do this. Who knows what game this is? Somebody in the chat, who knows what this is? Almost. Sam, you're close. Yes, exactly. No one knows what this is because it's a game that Amazon released that got shelved after like 2 months. I don't even remember the name now that I'm saying this now, but it was, oh man, no, this is hilarious. Amazon game that was a flop. Gee, I shouldn't have to look this up. Crucible. This is Crucible. Amazon spent like 60 million bucks on this game. And to be a leader at Amazon, they encourage you to be vocally self-critical, even when it's awkward or embarrassing. So if we were to go up to the person that was behind Crucible and say, hey, what happened? You know what they'd say? Yeah, it was a failure. We saw gaming as a massive opportunity. We thought we could break into the market, but the game wasn't executed well. And I take responsibility for that. They don't hide behind the loss. They say, hey, we saw a huge win. We went for it and we fell short. So it was a big loss. So tell them about how you personally struck out swinging for the fences. Don't talk about failure from 10 years ago because you're scared to talk about messing up. Talk about something that cost the company money or taught you a big lesson, even if it meant contracts getting lost or something big in the architecture happening. If you went about it for a good reason and you saw a big potential for if it went through, tell them about it. You're speaking their language. At the end of the interviewer, when they say, hey, do you have any questions for me? This is the type of question that would show them signal for LPs. Okay, so great candidates find opportunities that good candidates don't. Don't go into the end of the interview and they say, hey, do you have any questions for me? And you go through the typical old terrible ones like, yeah, what are the locations of the office? Is this remote? What are the roles and responsibilities of the position? What's the tech stack? Go in there trying to show signal for LPs. Like this one, to me, this shows learn and be curious. This definitely shows customer obsession. This shows a lot here. So use the opportunities that you have. Okay, bonus. This one's big. Also learn this from the bar raiser. Okay, if you bomb your coding round, there's still hope for you to get an offer from Amazon. If you have a poor showing as a candidate, there's still hope for you to get an offer from Amazon. Learn and be curious. A really good showing on learn and be curious shows that you're coachable. And if you're coachable, your concerns are less of a concern. So you can still get the offer if you're under through learn and be curious. But if you already are gonna get the offer, having a good showing isn't gonna do much. It's like nice, but it's not a big deal, okay? Coachability can turn bad people into great people in every way because they're coachable. Taking hints in a technical interview is another way to find, is another signal for coachability, by the way. Okay, really important. Maybe the most important thing that I've found out since writing this guide. Let me ask the chat. Okay, if I am at Amazon and I'm a candidate and every single one of my interviewers says that they want to hire me, but then the bar raiser says they don't want to hire me, am I hired or am I not hired? You're not hired. That's exactly right. So a bar raiser is someone who has been picked by Amazon as an employee who redefines expectations at Amazon, essentially a top performer. And so every interview loop will involve you getting interviewed by interviewers, but also the bar raiser. So the bar raiser and the hiring manager have a much more important opinion than everyone else. So I want you to know when you're interviewing with Amazon, who your bar raiser is. Now, there are two ways to do this. You can straight up ask, who is the bar raiser? It's not against the rules. They might not tell you, but even if they don't tell you, it's kind of obvious. The bar raiser is the person who has nothing to do with the team. Like they might not even be at the same position or the same, they might even be the same position that you're going for. They kind of stand out. It's like, which one of my interviewers is not like the others, who's also not the hiring manager? That's the bar raiser. Yeah, they can veto hires, the bar raiser. Okay, great. So what do we do with all this information? You can book Amazon mocks on our website if you're interested in seeing what this experience is like. You can book mocks with just a one-off coach for a couple $100, or you can sign up for a package. It's called dedicated coaching. We've done a ton of mocks on the platform. People usually significantly increase their scores after doing mocks on the platform. And if you want to know the difference between dedicated coaching and just the one-off mocks, the basic difference is that dedicated coaching gets you somebody week over week who could say, hey, last week we talked about impact. You still aren't talking about impact. This week you talked a little bit about metrics, but still not enough. A dedicated coach can highlight your strengths in a more specific way. And you can book as soon as you feel like practicing. Usually, if you're wondering, I've been grinding on leak code for X amount of time. Should I do more leak code? That's a good idea to book a mock. Get some real feedback from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Secondarily, you can book real interviews with Amazon on interviewing.io. The best part about this, if you fail with an Amazon interview tomorrow, you got to wait. You got to wait till like Christmas to interview again. That sucks. But if you fail tomorrow on interviewing.io, you can apply to Amazon the next day because our interviews are anonymous. So if you fail on our platform tomorrow, they wouldn't know who you are if you applied the next day. And if you pass, you go straight to onsite. So after you've done a few coding mocks and you're warmed up, or after you've done a few coding interviews, probably ready to book with Amazon and see if it works out. So that's all I got. And time for Q&A. And then after, we're going to party on Discord. All right. Open. All right, rank these babies. What do you have not prepared for? Adequate werewolf. Do you mean that it's a question that you've never heard before? If I am getting a behavioral question that I have never heard before, I'm trying to think about an actionable way to say this. If I have no idea what they're asking about and I have no idea what story to tell, I probably don't want to answer that question. If I have to improvise, that's something else. So on one hand, you could say, okay, let's say I have to tell an example that I've never told before. Well, you kind of got to think a few moves ahead, like in chess, and you kind of got to know the interviewer can drill down for 10 or 15 minutes on a single point. So I want to be ready for follow-up questions, but also I want to be ready to say, I don't know more quickly in the follow-up questions. Since it's an answer that you've never gone through before, the follow-ups are more likely to stump you. So I would say, think ahead and realize follow-ups will hit harder and you might not know as much. Number two, you can be honest about that and say, you know, I haven't heard this one before. So I'm kind of working off my assumptions as I answer this. But let me know if this sounds off base, and I'll let you know if I don't have anything helpful left to say. You know, so I would basically be open and honest about the fact that you're not doing this one with as much confidence as you would be the other ones. That's what I would say. Does everything we're talking about here also apply when interviewing with AWS? Yeah, absolutely. The LPs are not specific to just retail Amazon. They're specific to any org that is at Amazon. I got a ton of guys that work for AWS that I work with because I'm a negotiation coach too. And I help a lot of guys recently with offers at AWS. So while the culture for different orgs under the Amazon umbrella might have different reputations, they still all interview and go by the LPs. Amazonians love their LPs and AWS people are no different. Yeah. Is it okay to repeat experience examples, not with the same person, but with other interviewers? So can I use the same story for each interviewer, or do they tell each other afterwards which story I've used? Okay, Daniel, thank you for asking this question. They tell each other afterwards what story you have used. In Amazon's system, the way that they write feedback, it has 3 categories: pluses, minuses, and mixed. So the really inexperienced interviewers, they don't really know how to rank an interview. So they kind of live and die by the system of plus, minus, and unsure. So they write everything down. But even beyond that, a lot of the people do write the feedback down. And the bar raiser was saying, because remember, each interviewer gets assigned 1 or 2 LPs to rank you on, right? That's what we know. So overall, you'll get around 8 LPs. And he's saying when he looks in the feedback and all 8 LPs, meaning every single question you got asked from all of the 8, every single question you got asked about all 8 LPs are all going after the same 2 stories, then that's an automatic like no. Like this person's supposed to be a senior engineer. They only have 2 projects they want to talk about. Like that's insane. So you can repeat. Let's say this. You can repeat. I might want to verify this, but I would say if you have 4 or 5 projects and you can stretch those, let's say 4 to 6. If you have 4 to 6, then you're only repeating 4 projects once each, or you're repeating 2 projects once each. So I think that's a better spot to aim for. So yeah, repeating with one person would be the same as repeating with other people. So come in ready to talk about 4 to 6. That's what I would say. But make it clear when you're talking about the same one, ask them if it's okay. Be like, hey, I already talked about this one earlier. Is it cool if I talk about this one again, but in a different light? It really highlights this other thing that you're talking about now. Okay. Can you hijack LP interviews by proactively segueing into LPs you want to broadcast to prevent them from asking? This is interesting, Tyler. Can you proactively segueing? Earlier today, my bar raiser described exactly this. He said the other day he heard not everyone needs to do this, but this is an example of how you can hijack. He heard a candidate who gave such an interesting introduction that all of his questions as an interviewer were all follow-up questions from the candidate's introduction. But think about that. The candidate came in and planned that introduction. He essentially took the interviewer where he wanted him to go. He talked about a recent interesting project. He left breadcrumbs, and then the interviewer went down the exact road the candidate wanted him to go down. So I'd say the best thing you can do to hijack would be to have a really interesting recent project that you talk about in your introduction that lays enough breadcrumbs down for good follow-up questions that the interviewer will want to ask you. Essentially, if you get their curiosity going, they'll go down the road you want to go down. I don't want to coach you all on this, but I do just want to say that this is a thing just because it is true and it's better for you to know than not know. You can also ask what LPs that they're going to assess you on. Sometimes the recruiter will tell you, and sometimes the interviewers will tell you. So it's not against the rules to be like, hey, like what LP is this question about? They might not tell you. And I don't coach this system. I coach the customer obsession all the way system, but just it is something you should all be aware of that you can do. Okay, Ming Wang, how do you know if your story is impactful enough to pass for LPs? Okay, so for L6, I just heard this the other day, and I don't know. I have to look that one up. Ming. I don't want to be wrong. And I have to look that one up. And then if I can find it, I don't know if I can, but I can write it in the Discord. Okay, thoughts on using stories from non-engineering jobs. Hey, Mike H. Are you pretty early in your career? Probably. You're going probably for an SDE1 role. Mike A. All right, well, I'm going to guess that Mike is early in his career. If you're early in your career, you have what you have, right? You probably don't have a lot of professional experience. So you talk about school a lot. You talk about personal projects a lot. The same is true for non-engineering jobs. Like if you have non-engineering experience mainly, well, you have to talk about what you have. You don't want to make stuff up. But here's the thing. Framing is very important. I know a lot of people that have worked in non-engineering jobs that you can frame as engineering jobs. Like, for example, there was a guy who was a philosophy professor at Kansas. He had his PhD, but he was doing Monte Carlo simulations all the time. So I just had him focus when he was talking about the Python that he would write, because that's the most obviously understood part for the roles that he was going for. So you want to frame it in the simplest of terms and don't get stuck into the minutia of trying to explain to them the non-engineering stuff that they don't need to know. Focus on the stuff that is the most engineering and showcase it in a way, if it's about programming languages especially, That's the easiest way to make it seem the most applicable. If the impact in engineering was less than at non-engineering experiences, impact is about money, man. You know, if you can talk about how you understand the business enough to cut costs or increase efficiency or, automate processes, it doesn't matter if it wasn't like quote unquote traditional software engineering. Impact is something that transcends the type of role that it is. So impact is great. And I would say impact would come first, then framing my non-engineering experiences to be as engineering as possible would come second. And then third, just realizing like you can't make stuff up. So you got what you got. So represent it in the best way you can. How to recognize the bar raiser interviewer among all the other interviewers. So number one, Gail, you can just ask, hey, who's the bar raiser? You can ask your recruiter or you can ask one of the interviewers. Number two, how to recognize them is that they don't fit in. All of your other interviewers will be on the same team or at the same position or in the same role. So they'll talk about the same stuff. This person should stick out because they talk about a project that is nothing to do with this team. Like if they mention, I don't know, security, and you're interviewing for Amazon Go Store for some production engineer, they would be the only one that talk about security, but also they'll be the only one that talks about anything that doesn't apply to this team. So the bar raiser should stand out because they are different. The hiring manager should stand out, obviously, because they're a hiring manager, but the bar raiser would be the technical person that stands out because they're involved in other stuff that the other regular interviewers are not involved in. Okay. Yes, the recording will be available. What are the front-end interviewers? Do you know how the decision process works after the on-site? No. Okay, so here's what it is. The hiring manager needs to say yes. If the hiring manager doesn't say yes, doesn't matter. And the bar raiser needs to say yes. The bar raiser doesn't say yes, doesn't matter. So all the interviewers can say no, and just the hiring manager and the bar raiser say yes. If that's true, you get the job. Think about it for a second, right? The hiring manager is the person hiring. So if they don't want to hire you, you don't get hired. And then think about the bar raiser. The bar raiser looks at everyone's feedback and they have the ultimate power to veto or to support what we should do. So those two votes are the most important votes in the room. I hate to make this political, but it's like California and what's the other state with the most electoral votes? Not to say that you don't matter in Ohio, not to say that your vote doesn't matter in Ohio, but no, seriously, sometimes the mean way to say this to an interviewer at Amazon is the interviewers at Amazon don't matter. And if you want your vote to matter, become a bar raiser. It's the mean way to say that. But yeah, you don't need all of them to say yes for you to get hired. You don't even need 50%. You just need the bar raiser and the hiring manager. And so that's what I'm trying to say. It's important to know who the hiring manager is and who the bar raiser is. Yeah, sorry, the bar raiser and the hiring manager. I said that last part wrong. So yeah, the decision process after the onsite, the bar raiser looks at everybody's feedback that they've all entered into the system. Remember the plus and the minus and the mixed, and they try to see, is this person better than 50% of the applicants that we see or worse? And they also, it's 50% of applicants and 50% of current employees. So are they better than the 50% or worse than the 50%? And then the bar raiser makes the final call, and then that's it. Is there a senior specific of LP questions to prepare for? Yeah, there is. I'll give you some examples that aren't exactly what you're asking for, Jai, but earlier today when I was talking to the bar raiser, he was sharing with me that L6 candidates, so SDE 3, where is this? L6 candidates are going to get asked about think big and invent and simplify. But I want to make it very, like, my coaching process is really just to aim for customer obsession the whole time. So we really shouldn't focus like so much on this, but just to let you all know, Think big and invent and simplify will be asked if you're L6, but not if you're L5. So if you're L5, you'll get deliver results and learn and be curious and customer obsession. So there are patterns for each level, and there are LPs that are going to be asked at each level that won't be asked at other levels. So the answer to that question does exist, Jai. I don't know off the top of my head what it would be for senior SDM, but if I had to imagine, when you're getting into the management ones, probably you're getting closer towards hire and develop the best would be an obvious one. I would think frugality, but I would check. If I sign. One of the cool things in the platform right now is you can actually book just a one-off interview with somebody who's at the exact level of the job that you're interviewing for at Amazon. So if I were you, I might just say, hey, person who's already doing this job, what are the most common LPs? And they'll tell you. Okay. I don't know what the front end interviews at Amazon are like, Warren. That's a good question. They still involve a lot of LPs. I know that much. There's still as much LPs as the backend or full stack roles. Front end LP and then main L4, L5 to L6. So I'm writing down the questions that I want to look up for later. Okay. No. Java. No. Put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager. Put yourself in the shoes of someone who is a bar raiser. So this is the question. Is it bad form to have a notepad or a document with your answers to use during the interview? Absolutely not. Think about the perspective of the interviewer. What would we think about Java if we see that he has a notepad? We'd think, he did his homework. He cares about this opportunity. I always have a cheat sheet. I had a cheat sheet tonight. Can't remember everything. So that's really smart. Since there's behavioral in all interviews, can you reuse the same answers in different interviews? You can, Matthew, as long as you don't use the same 2 for all 8. If you only talk about the same 2 projects in all of your behavioral rounds, you are not going to pass. But if you talk about between 4 and 6 projects across all your rounds, that's okay. And you will repeat yourself sometimes using, let's say, one project that was about, I don't know, shipping a project from end to end. That would be something that's good for ownership, because that's literally the one qualification for what a good ownership question answer is about, is something from the beginning to the end. So let's say you gave an answer for that, and then later they ask you about conflict, and you say, hey, remember the thing earlier that I said about end to end on a project? Actually, that involved having a conflict with the tech lead. Would you mind if I used that answer again, but talked about it in a different way? And they'll say no. Okay. Is it good to answer a conflict? Is it good to answer a conflict situation where after a conflict, you come a midway to solve a problem and not fully convince the other person because there was some valid points from the other person as well? What do you think? Aishwarya, what did we say earlier? Remember? What's disagree and commit? It's disagreeing, right? That's number 1. But what's the second part? Committing. So as long as you disagree and then you solve the problem together, it's okay you didn't convince the other person. That's it. That's exactly the point here. When I say, hey, Aishwarya, I think you're wrong for this reason. Boom, I've just disagreed. And I say, hey, I even found data for why you're wrong. Boom, that's not necessary, but I'm disagreeing. And then after that, me buying in and saying, let's get this thing done anyways. That's the second part of this. I just saw a question in the chat that people mess up a lot, so I'm just going to answer that real quick. So it costs companies money every time you want to change a written offer. So the best negotiators only get one written offer. If you ask for a written offer multiple times, you're wasting their time and you're wasting their money. So this is what you do. After every offer that you get from a company, you get their initial offer, you send the recruiter an email. Hey, just want to clarify, here's the numbers that we talked about. That is your replacement of a written offer. And then you negotiate and then they up the offer, and then you send them an email right after, like, hey, just we're on the same page. These are the new numbers that we're talking about. Then at the end, when you're ready to sign, you say, if you can do X, I'll sign today. And they do the best that they can. And then you say, great, when can I expect a written offer? So that's when you ask for the written offer. If you're a good negotiator, you only ask once. And in the meantime, you just clarify over email what the offer details are. It's a very noob junior trick to be asking for written offers so early. I get it though, too. Like I get it, because sometimes like international students, like things feel really high pressure for jobs. And like, as soon as they get an offer, like their parents and cousins will all be telling them to take it. And it's like, they'll tell them to get the written offer. So there's just a lot of garbage out there from friends and families, from people that don't really know what they're talking about for written offers. So once again, to say it, the written offer happens once, and it's at the end when I'm done. Thank you for coming. This was very fun. And yeah, keep it going. Thank you all.